Welcome everyone. My name is Susan Patterson. I'm the host of this YouTube channel, and I'm thrilled to be able to have Shannon Forsythe with us today, who's going to share with you about an organization that she co-founded and directs called Run to Rescue. Run to Rescue trains churches to take in and rehabilitate rescued victims of sex trafficking right into their homes. From there, the host family often stays in communication and supports the former victims to become part of their church community. Shannon Forsythe and her husband Bartley co-founded Run to Rescue in 2012 to search, rescue, and restore victims of sex trafficking. Shannon was instrumental in rescuing their first girl in June 2012 and has gone on to work with over 250 survivors. From this work, Shannon has been featured in People magazine, Vice.com, and several other publications, as well as radio. She received the Woman of Significance Award for Courage from Seroptimus International of Corona. Shannon has spoken at numerous churches and venues. She has also been recognized for her work by members of the State Assembly, several city mayors, and has also received congressional recognition from the U.S. House of Representatives. What started with another mom's cry for help in locating her daughter, Run to Rescue has worked with multiple girls from California, Missouri, Florida, Texas, Nebraska, and Las Vegas, and has trained hundreds of people to join the fight in ending modern-day slavery. Shannon, welcome.
Thank you so much, Susan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, and what you have to share is so powerful. I really want all churches to know about this, because I know a lot of them feel called to really intervene in the lives of sex trafficking victims, and you have a complete program which supports them in doing that. And I know that's what people are looking for.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what your program does.
Well, we have our Reach, Rescue, and Restore. So we have three different parts to our ministry. Our Reach is to bring awareness and trainings and to help identify victims. Our Rescue is what it sounds like, is to rescue those that are out on the streets and bring them in. And we have an emergency shelter for that so that we have a place to bring them. And of course our Restore, which is very robust and complex, and we have multiple programs within that.
So how did you come to the issue of human trafficking?
Well, like everyone else, I saw this problem as overseas. It's not in our community. I never knew anyone that had trafficking. And then I got a phone call one day, and someone had, they had a friend that was missing. And I started realizing that the problem was here. I went to an event and a conference because I needed to help some of our missionaries. I worked in a missions organization, and they had some girls that were being trafficked out of Kenya. So I needed to give them some resources. So I went to a conference, and the conference was showing us how the problem's here. And the average age of entry at that time was 12. Well, my daughter was 12.
Oh no.
And I just kind of was intrigued and started looking into this, and the Lord just kind of started opening the door down to bringing us our first victim. We didn't seek out our first victim, and the Lord brought that first victim to us.
Wow. So what gave you the idea of having churches invite victims of sex trafficking into their homes?
The Lord showed me in Isaiah that he was going to raise up an army. This problem is so dark, and my motto for me personally is that God says in Isaiah, or it's in one of the scriptures, that he goes and pulls out treasures out of dark places. And these treasures are these girls who live in these dark places, but they're just not laying around. You don't see them, but you have to go into the darkness to pull them out. And that was what compelled my husband and I, that we are going to go into the darkness and pull out these treasures. And they're just gems and beautiful treasures. But then the church wants to know how to be involved. And I love that. Well, you know what? Our desire was to equip and to come in the church. And if they want to help, we know how to get them to practically not just donate money, which also is helpful,
sure,
or just give a backpack, which also is helpful, but to actually be hands and feet and disciple and do life with someone who has probably never even heard the gospel before.
Yes, one thing you brought up that I know is true for me, people ask me all the time, is how do you deal with the brutality of this? And I always tell in my faith that it's a grace.
Yeah.
It's a grace.
Right. If we know what God did on the cross, look at what he endured for us. And we can face it. Why? Because of our redemption, and God died on the cross and he forgave us of our sins. And then if we can say and look at what there is brutality and torture and it is heart-wrenching, and we think we're not going to be surprised, and we are surprised. But God suffered the same thing they suffered, if not, well, definitely worse. And so I remember that. And I remember that if God did it so that he could step in, then I could have the courage enough to step into their life and help in that brutality and that torture. And it's amazing to watch God heal and restore in that.
That is so beautiful. Thank you so much for that. That was awesome. I mean, I am so blessed. So what are some of the things you cover in your training?
Okay, so my training is 40 hours long, and here's why I started. I, as a Christian, went to all the Christian bookstores, looked for counseling on complex trauma, and it was subpar because the church doesn't deal with this kind of intensity. So through a lot of prayer and these circumstances would come up, and I do lots and lots of research. If it was on a trauma bond or if it was on a behavioral. And so what I learned is that we know that trauma determines how we make decisions, how our behavior, what our core beliefs are, how it affects our reactions and our trauma bonds so all of this. So I decided to put this all in a training. So our training is 40 hours of trauma training. And it's not trauma informed. You hear that word all the time. Yes. Trauma informed. Well, guess what, Susan? I can send you, when I want you to get a driver's license, this is what you need to do. You need to go to the DMV and get your license. I just informed her. But I didn't teach you how to practically go and how to take the test. And it may be a little complicated, so maybe I need to get you some tools to help study. Maybe you're really bad at reading, so I might have to sit with you and actually ask you the questions and help you go fill out the application. And what if you don't have an address? What if you don't have that bill that has your, so you need to bring in your AT&T phone bill and you don't have any of that. So how do you do all of that?
Yes.
Well, what happens for anyone, they stop doing it. So they won't complete that process. Well, trauma informed is like, well, gosh, she has trauma. Well, everyone knows that she's dealing with trauma. That isn't, you have been informed. You know that if you're going to be working alongside of us, they have trauma. But how do you talk a girl off her ledge?
Yes.
How do you ground someone? How do you de-escalate a situation? How do you help them learn to de-escalate the situation? How do they ground themselves? We teach practical tools. And the other thing is, we can quote scriptures all day long, but if we don't know how to use it properly, then we're harming them. Yes. Just like if you have a weapon in your home and you didn't learn how to use it, and then someone startles you and you take out your weapon and you harm your child, we didn't know how to use that weapon well enough. Yes. And so God's word is like that. His information is there on all of those practical steps in trauma. Oh, let's look at David, for example. David was a king after God's own heart. We love that. We want to be people after God's own heart, right? And David he had an anger issue. He was going to kill a man just because he just was mad because he wasn't going to give him food for his army. He was just upset. Well, where did it come from? Well, do you realize that his dad didn't even acknowledge him when they came to anoint a king out of Jesse's family? And he's completely dismissed David. Might be a dad issue. And then Saul comes into his life, the next male figure, or his brothers, who also, what are you doing here? When he brought them food and he killed Goliath. Now we look at Saul, who was brought in and wanted to kill him. Look at the men in his life who didn't nurture and raise him up. And so he had some anger issues, and it was a woman who talked him down and not to kill her husband. And so there are steps there. There are things in God's scripture that help us deal with some of these complex traumas.
Yes. And I want you to say a little bit more about how sometimes we hurt them, because what I've heard from survivors is a lot of them are really struggling with their relationship with God, because how could a loving God allow this to happen?
Right.
And then the Christian comes in well-meaning, absolutely well-meaning, and really wants to help them and bring them to Jesus.
Right.
But meanwhile, because they're struggling, they feel judged or condemned and not okay. And if anything, they need the opposite from us.
Right. And we have seen that. And we have seen that, and this is why we desire to have these trainings to equip better.
Yes.
We need to be better. And listen, God knew betrayal. He knew rejection. He had his friends deny him. It said on the cross that, Father, why did you forsake me? So he knows what it is to be forsaken. He knows those feelings. And God, what we do in training is to let everyone know, let these survivors know, listen, we are in a fallen world. We have to go back, that when God created this world, he created it for perfection and beauty and harmony and unity and love. That's what God wanted.
Yes.
And then sin entered the world. And then now we have free choice. And my free choice to do something horrible to you will affect you.
Yes.
And now God is wanting to step in. And here's what I tell all of our girls. If I'm in their life, then they were the ones praying, because I didn't know them to pray for them, right? I didn't know them by name. And so if I come into your life, it is because you prayed and God heard your prayer.
Yes.
And I'm here because God's answering their prayer.
Yes.
And God,
I got chills.
God told me that early on that we were struggling. And I'm going on a little tangent here, but we were struggling at the beginning. We would sell everything to help these girls and bring them into our home. And at one point, I felt like God wasn't listening, or he wasn't speaking.
Yeah.
And he was silent. And I was like, God, why aren't you speaking to me? And he kept getting worse and worse and worse. And I finally just yelled at him. And I'm like, God, why are you not listening to me? I'm here rescuing your girls. Why don't you rescue me?
Yes.
And then he spoke.
Wow.
And then he said, I want you to know what it's like to call on me and nobody come. And because when I'm going to sit where I'm sending you is every one of those girls have prayed to me, and I'm sending you. So it's not about me going in to do this work. I'm just being commissioned by God to answer a young girl's prayer.
Got it. What you just shared gave me chills. I mean, it almost brought me to the point of tears. To be someone who's being brutalized like that and exploited like that and crying out to God and no one comes.
Right.
I mean, oh my God, it's so heart-wrenching.
Yes. And this is why we as a church need to step out and go.
Yes.
Because if we don't, then God says he's searching to and fro to see who he can use.
Yes.
And kids and people are praying and we're not going. And that is, imagine one of our girls when she cried out when she was 7, and crying out, and a Christian answered the call, would intervene at 7, but we don't go. The church isn't going. And so now they're 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and now they're bitter towards God. And that's on us. It's because the church isn't going.
Yes. Yes. And we need to remember that when they're not so quick to embrace God in their life.
Right.
Yes. So I would love it if you could just share 1 or 2 short stories about the difference your program has made.
Well, just the other day, one of our 14-year-olds just accepted the Lord.
Wow.
And gave her life to the Lord. And not only that, but is bringing the entire family. And so God is doing this amazing work and bringing healing through the entire family. And in Isaiah, it talks about that they will be, restorers of walls and of things that were destroyed from generations to generations. So we're seeing generations being the Lord restoring, and that is utterly amazing. And we are one of our girls. She's 16, currently in our home. She had no high school when she came in. So last year she had 3 years of high school. Well, in 1 year, she got all 3 years done.
Wow.
All 3 years of high school done. And now we were able to put her into a private school, a private Christian school. And she's doing really well. And she's going to get ready to go on to college. And now she's working with our youth that just accepted the Lord and is doing Bible studies with her. So she's now pouring into other people. So the Lord is doing just a beautiful thing.
I love hearing that.
Yeah.
I love it. One other thing I'd like you to share is this, because as people are listening to you, and we're always looking to see how we can, serve others, which is what your program is about.
Right.
But I know from personal experience that I've been blessed over and over again in my serving of others.
Yeah.
Is there any story you'd like to share with us about a family that took in a
Yes.
survivor and how they've been blessed either with their children or something like that?
Well, I'm going to share a story of where one of our girls ended up leaving the home. And why do I share that? Because this is the reality.
Yes.
This young lady, she was doing really well. I mean, just the Lord was doing this work, and she goes into this home, and she was going to become an EMT, and it's transforming in the family's life, right? And so she just, things were getting hard because now they've got more freedoms. They're realizing she's in a school and she's doing well, and it's overwhelming. And she's
Yes.
feeling like she can't do it and she's going to
Yes.
fail. And so the typical tendency is to run.
Yes.
And so, so then she starts to get in her head and it starts to snowball. And that's the reality. And we train you for that. And so she ended up leaving. But here's the beauty, is the family grieved like it was their own daughter.
Wow.
Their family grieved, and she recently had just called, and their comment was like, we would love to talk with her. And that even though she didn't complete
Yes.
she completed a couple phases of our program, but that she left, she's going to come back to the Lord. She's talking about wanting to come back to the Lord. And because look at our wayward children, how much more would we bring them back in? Things look different. We do lose blessings when we stray, and that's the reality. Even the Lord tells us that, but he restores, and it's different.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
still good.
Yes, I know for me personally, watching these victims heal through
Yeah.
the power of Jesus
Right.
Christ deepens my faith. It's
Right.
seeing God in action.
Yeah, exactly right. And then you think, oh, well, why would we want to do that again and be hurt? Their heart was broken.
Yeah,
And they're
sure.
still willing to take another
Yes.
girl.
Yes.
And that is the heart of God, of like, they made an impact in her life so radical that she called and she's like, this was the worst decision I ever made leaving. It devastated my life because there was so much love and blessing
Yes.
that were poured out. But then to still hear that God still wants to restore you.
Wow. Wow. So if a church wanted to know more about your program, they want to, just kind of find out see what it would be involved and like that.
Yeah.
How would they contact you?
Well, definitely go to our website. It has our phone number and our emails, and call us. And no question is too little. We will come out. We will send someone out, even if it's only one-on-one, just to get more information. If you want a Zoom meeting with us,
Yes.
hey, it's so easy right now.
Yes.
Get on the phone with us. We'll set that up. If you want trainings, we will train you. If you want education, how do parents protect their kids from trafficking, we will do that. We will equip your church to not just do the surface, but to even go deeper. And not everyone's called to do that, and that's okay. But to open the opportunity for those that are, because there's
Yes.
someone called in the church.
Yes, absolutely. And I can't thank you enough for being here today. And for our audience, I don't know about the impact on you, but for every time I'm around Shannon, the depth of her faith blesses me. And I am moved to tears by who our God is when she speaks. She's clearly blessed. And, I can't thank you enough for being willing to come down here.
Oh, this was amazing. Susan, you have done, she's made such an impact for victims. And I'm just blessed to be your friend.
Thank you very much.